Welcome back. This is a fun one for me. Today, it's me and Joe Swanson. Now, Joe Swanson has got a really interesting story. He's a tattoo artist turned California Highway Patrol officer. And we talk a lot about that in this episode. But one of the things about Joe that we don't talk about, I don't think, is that Joe was actually the presenter of what I think is the first ever tattoo podcast. And that was the Sullen podcast, which I think was about 2012. Now, if you're interested in that podcast, it's been a little bit hard to find for the last few years, but Sullen have just re-released it. So by the time you're listening to this, then it should be available. So go and search it wherever you listen to podcasts. And the presenter is my guest today, Joe. We'll be talking about a world that most of us only see from the outside, and that is what it's like to be a chippy, dealing with accumulative stress, mental health pressures, and tactical resilience in law enforcement, and what any of that has to do with tattooing. Joe breaks down how tattoos were once a no-go in the force, how perceptions are shifting, and what lessons from policing translate into keeping yourself sane while you're in your tattoo booth. We also talk community, mindfulness, and personal responsibility. The idea that no matter whether you're patrolling the freeway or finishing the shading on a sleeve, growth and connection are what keep you sharp and grounded. And plus, the business side of tattoos isn't left out, evolving models, mental health resources for artists, and how the industry can better support its people. This one's about resilience, craft, and keeping your head clear while you're doing what you love. But that's enough of me talking about it. You want to listen to it, right? So let's get into it. But let's get straight into this, because I really want to ask you this first question because I'm so excited about this. Can you tell me about being a member of the California Highway Patrol? And is it true that they're actually called Chips like the TV show?
Yeah, Chippies. Well, man, Paul, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it. It was something I was looking forward to, and here we are. So I'm super excited about this conversation. And yeah, absolutely. It's Chippies, highway patrolmen, or now women as well. There's been tons of women on the department. So, but Chippies, yeah, they call them Chippies. Oftentimes you see the Smokey the Bear hat that they wear, and
So do you have the same brown uniform like they had in the TV show?
Yeah, absolutely. The beige uniform, blue patches. And now some officers, depending on what you're doing on the job, you might wear a blue uniform, BDU pants, which have the pockets on the side, a little bit more tactical. I wore that blue uniform. I did scale facility work, so weighing big rigs and inspecting big rigs and doing hazmat inspections and things like that. And then I worked on the road as well doing that. And so I got to wear a little bit, what I would consider a little bit more comfortable. Those beige uniforms are usually made out of wool. And so heaven forbid it's wet or raining and they get wet. It just stinks like a wet dog.
That sucks. Yeah.
It was amazing. I had been tattooing. I started tattooing in August of '96 and learned under a great guy, Steve Hendricks, still a good friend of mine. And he's retired now, sold his business, his tattoo shops. He's living the great life out in Texas. And so I learned in Monterey, had a good group of people around me, and came up, learning about all the heavy hitters, Ed Hardy, Mike Malone, Sailor Jerry, Zeke Owen, these guys in Tattoo Time magazine that had been, really pushed by Ed. Eddie Deutsch had done my mentor's back piece. And so I have an Eddie Deutsch Rock of Ages on my forearm that was done at 222. And I have some Scott Sylvia work, Jeff Rescher work, all those guys from San Francisco, because I ended up working there after a little bit of time. But yeah, started there, '96. And around 2000, I was in San Francisco, just struggling. I had a small family. I was commuting from another Bay Area city, and I was working at Picture Machine Tattoo. Everybody knows Picture Machine for the flash that Pat Martinique, and I was working for Pat's son, Guy. And it was 12-hour shifts, and I was struggling to make money, down on the old Geary location. And I was looking for something that was stable, was going to be good for my family, had longevity to it, and was going to be fun in my mind at that time. And I loved the idea of cat and mouse, Tom and Jerry. I'm going to chase you. You're going to try to get away. I'm going to use my set of tools. You're going to use whatever tools you got. And then one of us is going to win. Let's just not
Yeah.
try to kill each other, but let's have some fun. And that's what it was. I knew that I had to get into a department that was going to pay for me to go through the academy and go through training. And so I applied for a handful of different departments that fit that bill, and the department, they call it, California Highway Patrol, picked me up. And so I went through a 26, after extensive background research, extensive paperwork, interviews, lie detector tests, psychology tests, written tests, panel interviews. It was an extensive process. I started my academy journey in August of 2000. I graduated February 9th of 2001 as a highway patrol officer. And I had sleeves, and that time, Paul, the highway patrol and law enforcement had not seen that. It was very tip of the spear, but I had good qualities. I was a good guy. I didn't have any criminal record. I was just happened to be a tattooer.
Yeah.
And tattooing. And so they let me on, and day one, I love telling this story because it speaks to just the stress that law enforcement goes through immediately. And I remember day one of the academy, there's 90 of us, standing there in the parking lot, fresh cut grass in August. I can still smell it. My suit hot, blue suit and tie, and you're waiting in the August heat of Sacramento, California at West Reed Avenue. And all of a sudden, Paul, it goes from calm to chaos. And there's a dozen staff officers in those uniforms, Smokey the Bear hats, polished boots, pressed uniform, come around the corner, and they're ready for action. And they're in your face, yelling at you, triggering you, and you see people melting from this stress just all around you. And you're just trying to hang tough. And so we grab our stuff, we get ushered into the gym, and it's a constant just pressure pot of tension and yelling and move here, go there. Yes, sir. No, sir. Cadet, why are you here? Cadet, you're this, you're that. And then they kick us out to our rooms, and we're going to go get into the cadet uniform of the day. Well, what's the cadet uniform of the day? Short sleeves.
Oh.
So we get turned out into our uniforms. We come back to the gym, and needless to say, there was a big laser, a spotlight right on me.
Yeah.
Because I have sleeve, I didn't have my hands or my neck done, but I had full sleeves down to my wrist.
Yeah.
And I had the staff sergeant, Sergeant Cooper, great guy. I ended up working for him in Oakland, California, and he's right in my face. 3-4 other staff officers around me. He's like, "Who let you in here, Swanson? Cadet Swanson, I am already sick and tired of seeing these tattoos. You better get your ass back to the room, get changed out. I don't want to see them anymore." So I start running out of the gym to get to the room to get long sleeves on. "Slow down, Cadet Swanson." And so I slow down. "You better move with purpose, Swanson." It is a back and forth juggling game of pressure and, you better not run on these grounds. You're disrespecting our sacred Highway Patrol Academy. So I get there, and I'm already expecting this, right, Paul? I mean, I came in, I knew it was going to be a game like this. Get to my room, get changed, get back to the gym. And this pressure and me in long sleeves lasted about 3 days.
Right.
Highway Patrol Commissioner at the time, Spike Helmick, he came out. Now, I found this out later. He came out and kind of peeped me from around the corner and to see who was this guy that had all these tattoos and what are we going to do about it? Well, they put me back in short sleeves, and because they can't discriminate against this person, so you can't be the one out of 90 that are in the long sleeves just because you have tattoos, because they didn't have any policy on it.
Right.
It was constant stress. And the reason I'm telling people this, and the reason I tell this story, is because it illuminates the type of stress that law enforcement has right from the beginning.
Yeah.
And it doesn't end when you graduate. When my wife at the time pinned my badge on and I got to go out and be a highway patrol officer, it just continued. And I would say it elevated department scrutiny, public scrutiny, partner scrutiny. I mean, it was just all eyes on police. So it was an amazing experience, though. I worked for the Highway Patrol about 5 years, and I worked at a local police department just west of Sacramento in a city called Vacaville for about another 2.5, 3 years. Total time, 8 years. And, I got to a place, I did a lot of fun stuff. Had a great community around me. I worked on my weapons tactics. I worked on jujitsu, Krav Maga, boxing. I kept myself fit, but I didn't have what I teach now. These are tactical tools that I teach in my tactical resilience training system for law enforcement to reset the stress load that happens every day in that 8 to 12 hour shift. I didn't have those tools to reset. And so I still came out, and it is a fact, Paul, that you can't outwork the stress of that kind of job, right? You can't just ignore it. It will accumulate on your body and on your mind. It's called allostatic load. And if you don't reset it and recover, it affects your nervous system. You stay in idle, fight or flight, which causes hypervigilance. It affects your A-axis hormone system. So your cortisol and your adrenaline, they stay spiked. It affects all of these different aspects of your body, which is why I was taking care of myself, but I was still depressed. I was still fatigued. I was still disconnected, patient with my kids, man. It was what I don't want to see in officers now, which is why I do what I do and train what I train and get really real about it.
Yeah, I had to learn the stress thing the hard way, just from being in a job where hypervigilance is something that unfortunately happened to me in childhood. So, I suffer from complex PTSD from, all that kind of stuff. And actually it's the same kind of thing. I've never been in law enforcement or the army or anything, but every building I'm in, I know where all the doors are.
Right. Yeah.
Just from survival, not from training. It's like, no, I need to, I won't sit in a room when I can't see the door, all that sort of stuff. And I had to get to breaking point, actually, before I reached out to somebody and said, look, I'm struggling. I was self-medicating by this point. Because, I come from a world of rock and roll. I grew up in a rock and roll band. So the first thing that you do, I'm struggling, reach for a bottle, for some pills, because that fixes everything, right?
It's the same across the board. And you have such a high rate of alcoholism, high rate of divorce, high rate of substance abuse in law enforcement. You have the exact experience that, what affects the body and how it affected the body. And you got to a place, this is great to hear, because you got to a place where you asked for help.
Do you know what did it though for me?
Tell me.
I tattoo a lot of police officers in the UK. I tattoo beat bobbies, guys that are walking the streets. I tattoo some armed response people, because our regular cops, they don't carry weapons. They carry tasers these days. So we have a special set of guys that have got heckler Koch stuff and and all that. And through talking to them and then tattooing a lot of military guys coming back from Afghanistan and places like that. And they talk to me about their PTSD and, because some of the stuff that they say, I've tattooed some guys that served in Bosnia, which I'm led to believe was like the worst, the worst kind of stuff to see.
Yeah.
And they're coming back with, all these kind of syndromes and problems. And I'm sitting there thinking, dude, I do all of those things. Maybe actually just growing up in because I left school in 1983. So, so I was into Margaret Thatcher's version of Britain. So Reagan would have been in the US. Really weird time to be around. We got like the miners' strikes. It felt like the country was, actually it felt exactly like it feels right now. It felt like the world was about to burn down.
Sure.
And I was in a really bad part of the world, no parents, so, hanging out with all the wrong kind of people that aren't going to ask questions about a runaway kid that's living in a squat with, junkies and bikers at 15 and 16 years old. And then you come out of it and you go, later in life, I just started to really, really struggle with it. Of all the lovely things that tattooing has given me, one of the things that it did do, because social media was quite new when I started doing it, you got a lot of instant criticism, and I don't deal with criticism at all. If you're criticizing me, then we'll go outside and we'll figure it out, right? Because that's the only way I know how to deal with stuff, right? So it was ripping me to pieces, and I just really struggled. And it wasn't until I had to go and seek help and go, look, I can't medicate my way out of this, and I think this is a deeper problem. And it took me about What it be now? It'd be about 4 years now,
Yeah.
just to get to the point where I'm happier in my own skin than I've ever been because of finally going, look, hey, I can't do this. Can we just talk about some stuff? Because I need to figure some shit out.
And this is, man, I love hearing this because it is such a parallel to law enforcement. Why do you think, law enforcement is under constant criticism? And many of them, because of this cumulative stress and this trauma, PTSD, they have that same idea of, hey, well, we'll just settle this. And it turns into use of force issues. It turns into fights. It turns into officer involved shootings. It turns into this disconnect with the community and the people that they're protecting and serving. And it's sad. And so if you can break down, and what you said earlier was I had to get to the place where I was talking about it and I was open about it. There's such a deep culture of silence in law enforcement. When I came up, you didn't talk about your feelings. You didn't talk about how that call affected you. You dealt with it. However, you're going to deal with it, but don't bring it up here because that's a weakness. And what we know now is it's not a weakness. It is absolute biology that is happening to your body. And if you talk about it, which is why in my baseline recovery stack that I teach, there is a peer check-in protocol. How do you connect with your partner, your friend about this stuff so that it normalizes, so that you can reorient what you're thinking? And, in addition to that, there's grounding techniques that I teach, breath work techniques that I teach. These are very simple, not easy because you have to do them, but simple techniques you can use on the job while you're in your patrol car, while you're on a stop. You can use these things. And then one of the biggest and most impactful that I've also experienced, and this comes from my time as a tattooer and as an artist, is visual processing, visual journaling.
Yes.
There's so much science, Paul, about just letting the hand go and not thinking about it. And so you can grab, I have these little books. Every cop carries one of these notebooks for notes and to write things down. Well, inside mine, you're going to find a peer check-in protocol in the front, and you're going to find that visual journaling protocol in the back. And you can grab this, take 90 seconds, let that pressure release valve open up a bit, just with a simple, again, not easy because you got to do it and you got to think about it as tactical and as the reps. This is a correlation to tattooing is how do you get good? Well, you do reps after reps, line after line, whip shade after whip shade, pack color after pack color. You mow those lawns with that mag and you get it in there, and you have to do that same thing. And so
3 of the guys that work here I taught to tattoo, and that's one of the first things I tell them when everybody sucks on day one tattooing. Everybody sucks at tattooing. It doesn't matter how you come here. I was an award-winning graphic designer when I started. I still sucked at tattooing the day I started. And I said, there is no shortcut. You just got to dig all the ditches. It's as simple as that. Like that's what you got to do. You got to do 1 million lines. You got to pack color for 100 hours, and you got to shade and shade and shade until it just becomes it's just muscle memory now, to the point where you can do it without even looking at the tattoo because the hand will take over and it will just work itself out. I think it's one of the problems in the modern world, because if you grew up, if you were born, I mean, my daughter was born in the 21st century, for God's sake. But if you're 18 now, you grew up in a world that is not like the world that I grew up in. Everything is instantaneously delivered to you. And I don't think that's always the good thing. Sometimes the journey and the struggle is part of learning how to do it well, because you have to attain it, right?
Yeah. Doing hard things builds something in you that's different.
Yes.
This is what, I speak about this. This is resilience. And much of younger generation and much of even the older generation, because they don't know about it, they've built resilience, but they don't know how to language it. The younger generation doesn't know how to build resilience. And if you build it, if you do hard things and you put yourself through that crucible, you will be able to do more hard things. And like you said, man, everybody starts at ground zero and is shit at what they're doing usually. And so, just keep pushing and keep learning. This is personal responsibility and personal development. The second that you decide to take as a person personal responsibility for your development is the day that your life changes and gets way better.
So the thing that I liken it to is a boxer. When I'm talking to young tattooists, I go, look, okay, so you've started your apprenticeship. Tattooing is like it's like if you've ever stood in a boxing ring and hit somebody as hard as you can hit them and they didn't move, it's the loneliest place you're going to be for the next hour, right? Because your trainer can't get in there with you, your cut guy can't get in there, the bucket guy can't get in there. You've just got to stand there and go, I just hit this guy, I landed a great clean punch, and he just looked at me like it was nothing. Now I've got to do 10 more rounds of this or whatever. And I tell them, tattooing, the moment you sit down and that stencil isn't quite as accurate as you thought it was, and things aren't going quite as well, I can't help you. The client can't help you. They're already sitting still. They're doing the only thing that they can do. The only person who can fix it is yourself. And you have to decide, am I going to phone this one in and just not do it well? Or am I going to stick at it and stick at it and stick at it? And I said, if you think that ever changes, I have that situation once a week,
right?
Where I go, like, it still happens. You go, shit, man, I don't think I did as good a job of the stencil as I thought I did. I'm going to have to okay, put in the stuff that I can see, or maybe the stencil's not as strong as I thought. And I'm like, man, this thing ain't going to stick around. How am I going to get around this? I can't be turning and asking somebody to help me. Where's the cheat code for this? It's like, make the tattoo happen. You're the only guy.
Right. And the cheat code comes with the reps that you've gotten in before.
There you go.
I learned two of the biggest things that I came away with from two of the longest careers that I had was in tattooing, going on, 29 years this year, and being a cop for 8 years. That's one, communication, how to talk to people.
Yeah, for sure.
Two, intentionality and training. Basically, intentionality with your training, because there will be a situation that you come into, just like you're talking about, where you have to fall back on that training and you have to trust that stencil. You have to trust that wisdom of experience. And if you don't, it's going to go all bad. And so, yeah, I love it. There's a lot of interesting parallels between these two things that we're talking about, tattooing and
I think it's about living in the modern world, right? And the way the modern world has changed and the way it's moved away from us, the modern world is less human than it's ever been. So by taking responsibility and understanding that you're in a job as a tattooist where you are the only person responsible for the quality of your output. There's no one else to blame. There's no one else gets congratulated. It's you, and that's all. And you also have to appreciate that you're standing on the shoulders of giants. You're following on from every tattooist that came before you. I didn't invent anything. Right? Do you know what I mean? I don't claim ownership of any of that. Somebody else figured out how to make a tattoo machine. Someone else figured out how to make needles. Somebody else figured out how to do every single technique that I use. That I'm not employing anything groundbreaking at all. The only thing I'm bringing to the party is I've got a different way of looking at things, and I go, well, that's how I like art to look that way. Everything else, some very, very clever and ingenious people figured out how to make this thing work, and thought it was them and not me, because it'd be much worse. So the other thing that I want to talk to you about, so you've been a heavily tattooed California Highway Patrol officer, but you've also been a heavily tattooed elementary art school teacher. So for the benefit of my English listeners, how old are elementary school kids?
So kindergarten starts at 5.
Okay.
And goes up from there. And so I taught for 2 years. This is after my law enforcement career. Okay. And I had been tattooing for, a good number of years, and then ended up was in this place where, as much as I was tattooing at the highest level and around the highest level of tattooing, I always sort of never was able to get past this ceiling. And I think, having reflected on it for a long time, it was my mindset and the systems that I placed in my business, and it fell back on that personal responsibility. At that time, drinking a lot, other substances that were fogging my ability to really just lock in. And so I ended up working for a integrated communications company, which we built like meeting rooms for big companies like Dropbox and big companies like that in San Francisco. And I was working there just outside of San Francisco, and I was like, what can I do with art? This is when I first started doing some corporate wellness training, and I was doing art journaling for wellness, and I was trying to sort of break into a different way of using my art skills and my passion for art. And I thought, well, shit, I mean, I could be an art teacher. And I love teaching. I've been an educator my whole life. I put out instructional DVDs on how to paint tattoo flash, on tattoo style drawing. This was back in 2009. And at this time, it was pre-COVID. It was, 2017 or 18.
Okay.
And around that time, or maybe 2019, and I was working for this company, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to get my credential to be an art teacher. And I already had a great portfolio and was able to get through those requirements. I got into a program where I could teach while I was learning, and I got hired by a great school with one of the best principals and leaders that I ever worked for. Her name was Alicia, and she was an incredible leader. And so yeah, I started teaching, and we were building a little school. It was a public charter, and it was a part of a bigger organization of schools. And so first year it was online because it was during COVID. And so, teaching 50 to 70 kids art online was a challenge in and of itself. And I also got to teach some science, which was pretty fun. And then the next year I went into the classroom, which was also just had its own interesting challenges and rewards to it. Very much all about connection, very much all about systems as a teacher to keep these kids like moving from one thing to the next. And so it was pretty amazing. I did it, and then ended up breaking up with this woman who I was married to at the time, and needed a big change. And I ended up leaving California and coming out to Colorado, and did some real estate, worked in, this is the path that it took me from real estate, working with my brother who's an investor and has a big software company for investors, to working in program management, revenue management, sort of getting into the corporate space a little bit more directly. Still being able to use some creativity because it's all marketing, it's all sales, it's all like creative. And
I mean, dude, we're all selling stuff all the time. Everybody's a salesman.
Selling, man, ABC.
Yeah,
and
ABC.
Everybody within 3 feet of me, depending on what I'm selling, is a potential client. And then I got into worked for him for about 3 years and got some really good experience in corporate leadership, corporate, culture development and marketing, sales, all that stuff. Ran sales team for him. And then the opportunity came around to work for Tattoo Pro, which was a tattoo CRM and, lead management booking software for tattoo shops. Ultimately left that company. And this is where when I started Joe Swanson Tactical. This is the tactical resilience and wellness coaching that I do now for law enforcement departments. But I think tattooing was a little bit set in its ways with a particular model that it likes to operate under. Now, if you're willing to open your mind up to, and the people that you have working with you in that shop are willing to open their mind up to a different model, it can be a super great tool to keep your shop operating at its peak. But I think tattooing is still a little bit resistant. It's a little bit behind the times with respect to, we have to run a money drop system, and we have to, let these independent contractors, take control of their own world. And so it was a little bit of a challenge.
Do you know what I think the big problem with the business model in tattooing? Now, let me run this by you because you might have something to add to this. I think we had a brilliant system in tattooing when it was the tattoo flash. So you walked into a tattoo studio, the art that you could have was pinned on the walls. It had a price on it. The person that drew that was paid for it because you bought the flash or you painted your own. And also, if you made a piece from that flash and then showed somebody the thing that you did, you credited the artist that drew the original piece. So we had flash that was an economy of its own. You would buy flash from artists that you admired. You would sell flash to other artists. The art that was being drawn was all done for the sole purpose of becoming a tattoo. And the client knew the price when they walked in, and that's what it was. Where I think that falls down, and why I think we're in trouble in a lot of respects, is we changed the business model, but we didn't consult with the customers. But we didn't change the whole business model. We started offering custom tattooing, but we offered it at the same price or the same price point as flash. So we don't charge now, because somebody to draw a flash sheet, that's going to take you a few hours to paint that up. And then the artist would spend a couple of $100 buying it. So the artist that did the flash got paid. The artwork was paid for. But the moment we started making custom tattoos, because of the, I want to be cheaper than the guy down the road, we stopped charging for the art part of the process. We only charge for the tattooing. So now we've built ourselves an industry where you're expected to build a completely brand new, reinvent the wheel, custom tattoo for a client at the price they would have paid for a piece of flash that was drawn by someone else that you're going to do 15 times, 500 times, 5,000 times, And I think I don't understand the resistance to changing the business model, because the business has changed so much. The way we do it now, we can't really hold on to the past. That horse has bolted, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think until we start looking at it and going, okay, what does the audience want, and how can we sell that to them in a way that they can get a good price and we can make a living? And so I got so tired of just saying this to tattooists that I just decided, do you know what? I'm not going to try and change everybody else's mind. I'm just going to change my business model. So I take very, very few commissions every year. I sell art for money, like, a proper artist.
Yeah.
My gallery is just a website, and I release my artwork throughout the year. The only thing that I do is unless I've decided to do some repeated stuff, I might do a limited run where I'll do the same tattoo 5 times. Mm-hmm. Every single piece of artwork that I put out is a one-off piece of artwork that I do for one person. I got a lot of raised eyebrows, like you say that in a tattoo shop and they're like, what, you think you're too good to and I'm like, I don't think I'm too good for anything. I just think I feel differently about this than you.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you feel about the change in where we are now as to, because you started in a street shop doing that very traditional idea. I'm not sure that is going to work for much longer, to be honest with you. Particularly, I'm thinking, I can't really speak for America. I can only really speak for England. But in England now, I'm starting to see, there are kind of like chain stores of tattoo shops opening up, like the McDonald's of tattooing, right? And they've got the money and the backing to be in every single high street. And they're going to edge out those small indie shops, who I think if they don't start waking up pretty soon and start specializing in the off high street stuff, we kind of have to let that go almost. It's like, look, people going and getting their first tattoo on the high street, that's not a business that we can get involved in.
Yeah.
I don't think, because if there's 140 of these stores opened up around the country, I don't see how the little mom and pop stores do that. They're much better off going, well, look, we'll be off the high street. And when you understand what tattooing is really like and what tattooing can really look like, then come see us.
Yeah, I think you're right on point with it. There's a big, so the difference between that flash artist and the custom artist used to be a lot narrower. And now it's gotten up. There's a greater chasm between them. And I think you have clients who I think both models work, but I think they work for different reasons. I think you have people, like you said, maybe first tattoo, or they really just like, these small pieces kind of, placed on their body, and they're going to go and hang out with their friends, bring a little group of themselves, and they're going to go get that experience of that flash piece, and it's going to be part of that experience. Now, you have the other side of things where you have the custom artist, and that creates a different experience. And you have to cater to the experience now, not necessarily the type of tattooing. And so I do think that there's going to continue to be a greater chasm. You're going to have those, what one might call a corporate, you pick it, we stick it type of shop, and it's going to be lower priced. You might have artists working as employees, not contractors. Yeah. You're going to have insurance. It's going to be like a Starbucks barista who's just pumping these things out all day long. And then you're going to have the shop, which is your mom and pop, that is going to do a little bit more bespoke work for you. And they are going to charge a higher rate. They are going to curate a different experience. And both, I think, will work. You just have to reach out to the different type of client and curate that experience. Again, what I really learned diving back into the middle of tattooing from a different view and really looking at the business models was it's about experience.
Yeah.
And how do you get talking about sales, how do you get in front of the people that want that experience? If you can get in front of those people that want that experience, you can curate it, and you can curate whatever you want. Whether you have a handful of those little shops doing $50 bangers all day long, you can still curate a, $1,500, $2,000, dollar a day rate if you want, but you got to get in front of the right people.
In marketing, we call that identifying the audience, right? Which is,
absolutely.
And when I've been teaching my guys, I would sit there and go, you'll notice, that I don't advertise in tattoo magazines. You'll also notice that these days I don't do many tattoo conventions. And that's because when I look at my avatar, the ideal client or the most typical client for me, that's 38, no tattoos, no interest in the world of tattooing, loves art, probably loves music, movies or something like that, and comes to me for their first tattoo, and that's going to be a sleeve. And then they come back for the second sleeve. And that's pretty much the client that I get. So from a business model point of view for me, I was like, well, how do I get in front of these people? What do they do for a living? What do they do for, where are they for leisure? And these are guys that they're sneaker pimps, they're musicians, they're, movie makers. They're all creative people. So I'm like, well, I need to be advertising and putting my stuff in front of creative people. So where do I find those people? And so when I'm talking to my guys about this stuff, I'm like, identify who it is that's responding to your stuff, who is your ideal client, and then find out where they hang out, and then go and, if all your clients go to the gym, you'd be as well to advertise in your local gymnasium.
Yeah. I love what you're saying, man. It is classic business strategy, right? And I think every tattooer, whether you're working for somebody or in a private studio, you are the CEO of your business, and you have to think about these things. But these words, avatar and ideal client profile, ICP, all these things, they're not thought about as much. It's becoming more known because there's a lot of stuff going on Instagram, a lot of stuff on, these platforms teaching people, and so you can learn about it. But you're absolutely right. I used to say, you want to cultivate a professional clientele of people, find out, again, identify who that person is, and then go hit up all of the businesses around in those areas and give them a business card.
Yeah.
Lock down your region as opposed to, trying to cultivate likes on Instagram from all these different countries or to all these different states. Lock down your region and then start to build out from there. So it's really getting back to a more classic idea of business and a more classic understanding or idea of how we used to do it in tattooing. Is we would be the guy in your town, and then you'd be the guy in your state, and then now you're the guy in this region of states. Now you're the guy, in the US, whatever. I love what you're saying, man. It is so fascinatingly enough, it's so forward thinking in tattooing. But
I think it's because, like you said, you went from the tattoo world into a corporate world. Yeah. Well, actually, my story is the opposite of that. I was in the corporate world before I entered the tattooing world. So I worked in design and marketing for one of the UK's top 20 indie publishers for over 10 years and ran their art and design department. So this was my job for other companies. I was the guy that they sent out to have the meeting with the guy that's going to spend 60 grand on advertising with the company this year. So they send out Paul. I had a lovely pinstripe suit and a very nice short haircut and all that sort of stuff. Always a dark blue shirt to cover the tattoos, because I found that you can't cover it with a pink shirt because they can see through it. So dark blue shirt to cover the tattoos. And so it would be my job to go, okay, so this is what we're going to do with your ID. This is how we're going to change the color scheme. This is going to be the catch line for what you do. And this is who we're going to be selling to. All I do is the same questions that I asked people every single day of my life for 10 years. I just write them in front of my apprentices and go, you have to ask yourself these questions and be able to answer them.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And because you're the CEO, you need to understand your business. You need to understand the business that you're building. If you want to, sit there and have somebody assign you the work in a walk-in shop, then you have to accept all of the stuff that comes with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
That's fine. But you have to accept that you might, like you say, in the future, you might be a waged employee and you have all the stuff that comes with that. You will lose some of that autonomy that you want.
Yeah.
Or you can decide, do you know what? I'm going to strike out on my own and do that. Well, hey, talking about personal responsibility, then you better take responsibility for everything. Every small business owner will tell you that if you don't have a guy or a girl who's employed to do the thing that you need done, guess whose job title it now is? It's yours.
It's yours.
Now, if I don't employ someone called toilet cleaner and the toilet needs cleaned, guess what? I'm the toilet cleaner today.
Yeah.
That's me.
Yeah. And this is, look, I fully understand this from a place of, again, like you said, being in corporate, running my own businesses. I owned a tattoo shop for a while, working for other businesses, seeing what they do. And now with Joe Swanson Tactical and these workshops, who's prospecting? I am. Who's having the sales conversation? I am. Who's putting together the workbook and the facilitator's guide and the ideas behind it? Who's marketing it? Who's on Instagram posting? It's me, man. It's
man.
a one-man operation. And certainly this next year, as I scale and I grow to a place where I have my goals written down and set for, I will have other facilitators and I will have an assistant. I will have, some paid media going and things like that. But it comes with time and commitment as me being the guy doing it all right now.
Yeah.
And I love it because I'm passionate about it. I enjoy those conversations. I love being creative and figuring out what works, what doesn't. And I've done all these things in other positions where I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't passionate about it. And now that I am speaking about something and in a line of work that I know has meaning and purpose and I'm passionate about, boy, it's easy. I wake up every day excited about what I get to do. And that is a incredible feeling of freedom.
So tell me more about Joe Swanson Tactical. So this is, for those of you who are listening, this is joeswansontactical.com. The link and everything will be in the description. Wherever you're listening to this, it'll be there. So you just check the description if you want to go and take a look. So you're now teaching tactical wellness and resilience to law enforcement officers in the US.
Yes.
So what does that entail? I'm thinking that these are guys that are maybe struggling with the kind of things that I was struggling with, but for completely different reasons. And you're going to give them some of the tools to maybe get through this. I mean, I know that certainly for my journey, there was a lot of things like reframing. Like I don't have problems anymore. I have challenges. I learned to stop calling problems. They're now just challenges that I have to overcome. And is it learning stuff like that for these guys?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big part of it. Mindset is one of the 4 domains that really we lean into, and that's physical, emotional, mental, and purpose. Some might call that spirituality. Purpose is what I like to frame it as, because it's the why are you doing this? Why are you protecting and serving? And so, yeah, absolutely. That is the foundation of what I teach. And what we were talking about earlier is kind of comes full circle to the stress and that story about stress not stopping when you graduate this academy and start this career and go on. It just accumulates. And so I look at wellness from sort of a 3-ring place. And you can watch a little video on my website about this. And let's just break it down real quick here. This is the outer ring of wellness. This is stuff you're going to do off duty. This is your purpose-driven stuff, your community-driven things, hanging out with friends, spending time at the park with your kids, being with your partner, cultivating wellness in that realm. The middle ring is the stuff that you're going to do that takes commitment and takes time. So it's not necessarily are you going to do it on duty. These are longer meditation sessions, longer breathwork sessions, your weapons tactics, your jujitsu, these things that also cultivate these 4 domains of wellness. And then what I really focus on, Paul, and where I have found my niches and what I needed as an officer is this inner ring of wellness. And these are tactical, simple tools that take less than 5 minutes. You can do them on duty, in your patrol car, between calls, and you take it with you like your sidearm, like your radio, like your baton on duty every day. And these are the peer check-in protocol. And what's the best peer check-in protocol? The one you're going to use. So I teach a simple one that you can use, breath work, real simple 2 techniques I really lean into, grounding techniques to stop those that wheels spinning and the rumination of thoughts to get you back to
Oh yeah.
what's really reality. And then that visual journaling, that processing of stuff that you talk about, reframing, reorienting, and resetting. These are the things that I teach in a 1-day workshop at law enforcement departments, for officers, for supervisors, for command staff, for dispatchers. All first responders can come and benefit from this. And it's stuff that anybody that's dealing with chronic stress and pressure can improve their wellness with. And so,
Do you know what I think it takes? I think it takes openness to the idea, understanding that you're broken in some way and that you need to fix it, and take responsibility. I'm the only person who can fix it, but somebody can guide me to that place.
Mhm.
I just need to find somebody that can frame this in a way that I can ingest it and it makes sense. I didn't know, for instance, that there are 3 branches of therapy. 2 of them I cannot stand, and I like old school Freudian psychoanalysis. Like, as much as I am a bit of a hippie, I don't want somebody to talk to me like a hippie when I'm talking about my problems. I don't want to be told to come back to my inner child and give myself a healing hug. That doesn't work for me. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't work for a lot of people,
Sure.
and but you have to pick the person who's going to communicate, because all of these ideas are the same idea, communicated, but it's the person that communicates it to you in a way that you can digest it in small enough chunks that you can go, okay, I can get behind that idea.
Yeah.
I can work with that,
Yeah, this is so important, and why I think I was talking to a sergeant the other day, and he was saying this very thing. He's like, we have brought in wellness and resilience trainers before to the department, and I talked to the guys and gals, the officers that went to that training afterwards, and I check in with them and I say, hey, what did you think? It's like, man, I checked out about halfway through. That guy's just a corporate guy. He doesn't know what we go through. And so what he said, what he mentioned was me having that wisdom of experience, having walked in those boots, having put nearly a decade into that patrol car and on the streets. I can speak from a different place. I'm not a psychologist, a clinical psychologist. I am a former officer who is going to bring you some tactical tools and speak from a place of experience and with passion about it. And so when I go into a department, that connection is already there because I've walked in those boots. And what happened to me was I quietly quit that job. I didn't know how to reset. I didn't know how to take these tools on the inner ring of wellness and cultivate them. I was cultivating the other rings, but that inner ring is so critical to longevity and clarity on this job that I quit and could have had a long career. And so if I can come in to a department, connect and resonate with somebody who is feeling the beginnings or is in the middle of that heat of cumulative stress load, and I can help them reset with some simple but not easy tools to do that, man, that is what it's all about for me. I
That's
love
the big
that.
reward, right? If you can help people get through what you go through a bit quicker and a bit easier, then that's the big reward. And it's also, the karma thing, isn't it? Like karma keeps receipts, right? So if you put back in, you feel like, okay, well, I've got, I'm a big fan of balance. I've taken stuff out of things and I want to put stuff back in, right? So that's, for me, that's restoring a balance of like, okay, I've benefited from this, but I want to put back into it now. It's why, as you talking about teaching, I taught for a couple of years at universities about, publishing and being a journalist and graphic design and stuff. And other than the fact that I can't work in those settings because I've got a horrible response that I can't quite get a handle on with anybody in any form of authority at all. I immediately, whatever they stand for, I stand against it. And I don't know what that is about my personality. I'm still working on that. Like you telling the story at the beginning of this interview, like, dude, I'm the guy that goes, do you know what, man? Fuck you. And it's literally, I'm done on day one. I can't do that. I don't know what it is about me. I have this terrible trigger. The moment somebody is barking orders at me and telling me they're in charge of me, I'm like, you ain't in charge of me. Nobody's in charge of me. Like, I'm in charge of me, and that's that. And I ain't listening. And now I hate you and I want to kill you. And so that is a part I'm working on. I'm still working on it.
I love that you're working on it, and it's so not unique. It is a human experience that you're just willing to talk about and share vulnerably about. And I think that it's so powerful when one does that, because you're not, propping yourself up to be better than anyone about in this experience.
No, that's
You're
all.
saying, hey, this is my experience and I'm working on it and I want to get better. This is, again, all boils back down to personal responsibility. And in talking about, our karmic experience, I'm Buddhist. I follow these ways of thinking, and we have the opportunity to sow the seeds for our future using our body, speech, and our mind. And so you're doing that, I'm doing that. And if we can do that in a positive way to benefit more beings out there, man, super stoked on that.
It's all good, right? I mean, I'm reminded of a couple of things that I was taught, not actually in therapy. It was before this, but they didn't make sense until after therapy, where somebody said to me, all is mind, and as within, so without.
Yeah.
If you're a terrible human being, you will only attract other terrible human beings. If you've got a terrible attitude, you'll only attract other people with a terrible attitude. So you have
and that's not theory, Paul, right?
No.
That's science. Like, they've shown that if you think about positive things, what does your mind start looking for? Positive things.
Yeah. Positive things.
If you're looking for the negative, or you're looking for the problem, what is your mind start to look for? The problem.
Yeah, you're just catastrophizing all day.
Yeah, for sure, man. I've been there, brother. It's not a fun place to be. So, this is why I love meditation too, because it's a very intentional practice for cultivating the qualities of mind that one wants. And this can be truly and just very simple. The way I started, 15 years ago in meditation was just simply following the breath. And what I realized was I can't get hung up. I'm actually going to get excited when my mind wanders, because it gives me the understanding that I have the basis to come back to the breath. And that base, many don't have the basis and the foundation to be able to come back. They just get pulled around like a bull with a ring in their nose. They just get pulled around by those emotions. But if one has the basis to fall off and start thinking, get lost in their thoughts, and one's not going to stop their thoughts. This is a odd concept. You're going to just be able to respond differently to the thoughts, and having the basis to come back to that breath. Boy, it's a calming practice. And it's one that creates insight in yourself. So I love meditation. I practice meditation every day, and it's one of the main things that has helped me in my practice, for sure.
Yeah, see, I would tell you that I don't practice meditation until I realize that I absolutely do. But I do it with a guitar in my hands.
Yeah, it's all meditation.
My meditation is like a loop of music, 8 bars of music that just goes round and round, and I just sit there with headphones on and just sit and play nonsense over the top of it. And I can normally tell my mood by the sound that I want from the guitar. And then that allows me to access, well, why is the guitar so angry? Because the guitar is part of my voice, right? And I go, well, the guitar's angry, so I must be struggling with something. Okay, so what is the challenge that I'm trying to figure out? And I end up kind of doing this kind of like weird meditation thing. I realized the other day that I talk to myself an awful lot, right? Somebody said to me, oh no, that's a technique that you can learn. You just never learned it. You've just found it intuitively, that you're processing. You're standing on both sides. What you're doing is standing on both sides of the conversation so that you can figure out this problem. You're having a conversation.
It's beautiful. What it reminds me of a little bit is the visual journaling.
Yeah.
And the ability to sort of reorient and get outside of one's ruminating thought and just start to observe the observer, right? Observe the experience. And man, I love that, dude. It's great that you have happened across that. And again, with these practices, with these things, the more reps you get in, the more insights arise, and the deeper one can get into what direction to take that personal development.
Well, talking about directions, like you telling me about it, as you were telling me about the seminars, I'm like, I think you at some point, obviously you've got stuff to do, but I think at some point you could roll those out to tattooists, because I think I know a lot of tattooists that would benefit. I talk to them at conventions and stuff, and they're like, dude, you seem so much happier and healthier. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, all you got to do is do the work. You just got to be open to go, I'm struggling, I need to do the work. Somebody's going to have to hold my hand until I can find my way. You know what I mean? You could probably join those two things together and start doing this at tattoo conventions, because I think there's so many tattooists out there that struggle because of the pressures of what we do. And we're not allowed to say that we're struggling or that, because we've got to be big, tough guys.
Yeah.
Because it's still part of the image, right? And that's going a little. So I'd like to check back in with you in about 6 months and see if that became like, did you roll it out for the tattooists?
Well,
because I think there's an audience there.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if there's any conventions out there that have the investment budget and they want to roll something like that out, and I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to help whoever I can help.
I'm telling you now, Joe, if that was on a convention schedule of a seminar that I could attend, that is one that I would 100% attend. So if you are a convention organizer listening to this, I think this is a great idea. I think there's a lot of tattooists that would massively benefit from having somebody like Joe speak to them about simple tools that could like really help you out if you're struggling. Because I know there's a lot of booze and pills in our world. You know what I mean? That don't need to be there.
Yeah,
they
don't.
And people are hurting themselves because they think they got to be this thing that they don't have to be. We draw artwork for a living. It's supposed to be fun, man. Why did we make it so difficult?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean, those convention promoters and those people can go to Joe Swanson Tactical, fill out the little form at the bottom, and get in touch with me and start that conversation. I'm happy to open those lines of communication up and see where it goes, And
well, I know a couple of people that organise conventions, so I'm probably going to speak to that on your behalf and say, look, I think this would be a really good idea. You know what I mean? I've been talking about this for a few years. Even on the old podcast that I did, I was always talking about mental health and how important it is. And I think in the same way that having somebody from law enforcement that's walked a mile in those shoes to tell law enforcement officers, look, I can help you. You're also a tattooist. You've done what we do and you know the stresses that we go through. And so I don't want some dude in a suit that's going to turn up and start telling me to start breathing. But like if another tattooist that comes in and tells me, look, Paul, this will work, this will help you, then in exactly the same way, it makes sense, man.
Yeah, I agree.
It's brilliant.
I agree with you, man. I appreciate that. It's a human experience, and one can absolutely apply the same tools to the different type of stressors in your life, and it's everybody has a different perspective, and but yeah, man, you let me know. I'm happy to help as many people as I can, and from whatever, you never know what relationships will cultivate and foster. You plant a little seed and that seed grows and it benefits a lot of people.
And I think it will benefit a lot of people. So listen, Joe, I've really, really loved this conversation. I'd love you to come back on the show in 6 months' time so we can catch up and see how things are going, because I think this is it's a fascinating thing. Really, really fascinating. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you. I've really, really enjoyed it. Like, I think you're a fascinating chap with an amazing story. And I've got other questions that we didn't get to, so I'm going to save those for the next time we talk.
Okay, absolutely, Paul. I'm happy to come on and just let me say how much I appreciate what you do and
thank you.
The conversations that you have, and it's been a real honor to come on and such a joy for me to come on and talk to you as well and share my passion, share my heart, share my experience. Again, if it can help one person, puts a big smile on my face. And yeah, people can follow, go to Joe Swanson Tactical, obviously, but you can follow me on Instagram as well, Joe Swanson Tactical.
Yeah.
And I'm the guy. I'm the CEO running that.
CEO, toilet cleaner, window cleaner, all that sort of stuff. The same as the rest of us.
Totally, brother.
Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Well, thank you again so much.